Did you hear that? The whisper that curls around your spine right now. That's the echo of a name you were never meant to know. Carroway. 3 sisters, hidden on a salt-blind ridge so remote no map dared to draw it. Their house leaned like it was listening to secrets it could never tell. And inside lived Ununice, and Mebeth, cloaked always in black, drifting through Dogwood Parish like silent funeral shadows, baskets of herbs swinging by their sides, reeking of tallow and something older, something that smelled like graves cracked open before dawn. They arrived without knocking. Births, deaths, illnesses that clawed the lungs from within. Their cold hands on swollen bellies and fevered brows felt like final prayers. Some say they whispered in tongues older than bone. Others swear they never spoke at all, but everyone knew. Where the Carroways went, death always followed, slow, withering, as if life itself knelt before them, asking permission to keep breathing. The burial ledgers began it all. Names etched alongside causes of death, ruptured womb, bled dry, each entry ending with the same black scrawl of initials, EECMC. Even now, no one knows what it means, only that after they visited, babies didn't cry. Eyes stared unblinking into shadows. Mothers woke to find salt crusted into the cradle, or blood weeping from newborn eyelids. Jonah Bray's son never blinked again. Levi Donald's hair turned white overnight after standing near their fence. Elise's twins, one never cried, the other smiled for 6 weeks straight, never closing its eyes, even to sleep. And in the distance, the church bell fell silent, its rope sliced clean through. No one saw who did it. But everyone knew. These are not stories of miracles. These are rooms sealed so long, their locks have rusted into the wood. Rooms that remember us better than we remember ourselves. Because some truths were never meant to be spoken, only heard by those ready to be changed forever. They say the Carroway Sisters' path was never empty. If you passed near their house, your breath would catch. The air itself felt thick with old prayers or curses that never lost their taste. Some saw black feathers scattered along their gate. Others swore they heard weeping from the earth beneath their porch, like something buried alive was begging for mercy. And yet, the people still called upon them. Because when ash fever came, or when babies turned blue before first breath, no one else dared to touch the dying. Ununice would arrive first, her face hidden deep within her mourning hood. Followed, carrying tallow-soaked rags that reeked of burned marrow. And Mebeth, the smallest, she never walked on the path, always through the brambles, bare feet silent against thorn and root. Mothers whispered that Mebeth would place a finger upon the baby's lips and say, "Choose quiet," or "choose screaming." And some babies never cried again. Their silence grew into them, like a second spine. Fathers, watching from darkened doorways, felt their courage rot, because behind the sisters, it was said, walked shadows in the shape of children, small figures with caved-in chests and arms too long for their bodies. Then came the night the church bell fell, its rope, thick as a man's wrist, sliced as if by glass. The preacher, once their defender, refused to say their names after that. He said, "They've unbound what was chained." One boy, Levi Donald, wandered too close to their fence. He came back silent. His hair turned white overnight, and one of his eyes rolled inward, staring into a place no one else could see. On the ground outside their gate, small handprints were pressed into the mud, too small to belong to any of the sisters, too deep to have been left by children. People began leaving offerings at their boundary stones, salt, nails, teeth, hoping to buy safety, hoping to keep their children's eyes from rolling back in their heads, hoping to keep breath inside lungs that felt suddenly borrowed. But hope was foolish, because the Carroways didn't want offerings. They wanted silence, and in return, they gave you the same. Dogwood Parish learned too late that the Carroways did not simply appear. They were invited. Every whispered prayer for a safe birth, every plea to survive the fever, every desperate bargain beneath a rotting roof. These were invitations signed in sweat and fear. No one recalls when the first one came. Maybe it was a woman bleeding out in the dark, her husband on his knees in the mud, begging for anyone to help her breathe one more minute. Maybe it was a mother cradling her blue, lifeless newborn, whispering into the wind for a miracle, and the wind answered, with 3 shadows dressed for mourning. Their house, that leaning, groaning skeleton of timber, grew from these bargains like a tumor on the ridge. It was never on any map because it moved. Some swore they saw it shift on foggy nights, creaking closer to the village when a sickness bloomed, or when a new mouth was about to scream into this world. Inside, no lantern burned, only the thin glow of coals, the smell of boiled bark and old blood. There were rumors of rooms you could never count the doors to, rooms where you'd hear the echo of your own voice begging for something you'd never remember asking for. And sometimes, if you pressed your ear to the floorboards, you'd hear scratching, like something trying to get out or in. Yet still they came, the desperate, the dying, the barren. They stood outside that warped door with tears freezing on their cheeks, clutching their swollen bellies or hacking blood into rags, praying for the door to open. And it did, always. What came through that doorway never left unchanged. Some mothers gave birth to children with eyes too clear, too deep, as if they could see a life that hadn't happened yet. Others buried babies that never decayed. Tiny bodies that stayed warm in the ground for days, refusing the call of the earth. And if you think these were just stories, tales to frighten children into staying inside at dusk, look closer at the ledgers still locked in the church basement. Pages smudged with ash, ink so faint you must tilt them to the candlelight to see the same initials again and again. EECMC. You know what to do now. If you're still listening, prove you're awake. Comment this phrase twice and let the watchers know you're one of us now. Rooms remember. After the night of the bell rope, the village changed. The air felt bruised, crops bent before ripening, as if bowing to something unseen. Chickens laid eggs streaked with black veins. Calves were born with teeth already pushing through their gums. And always, on the ridge, that house leaned a little further like it was listening for the next desperate prayer. People whispered about the ground swelling around it. The earth itself bulged, cracking under some hidden weight. A farmer claimed he saw the foundation breathing, wood rising and falling like ribs under shallow breath. Another woman, who lost 3 infants within a year, swore she saw Mebeth burying something wrapped in hair and twine beneath an oak tree. When she asked why, Mebeth just smiled with teeth too small for her mouth and said, "To keep the spirits from gnawing." Sometimes in the dead of night, thunderless lightning flickered over the ridge, illuminating that house for a split second. And in that flash, watchers saw shapes in the windows. Thin figures pressed against the glass, mouths open wide as if screaming without sound. Children with limbs too long, faces too old, or perhaps faces not finished yet. When ash fever ravaged Dogwood Parish, Ununice appeared at every door. She placed bowls of boiled bark on hearths, whispering over the sick as they burned with fever dreams. Survivors described feeling a cool hand press against their chest as they lay unable to move, their eyes locked on the dark corner of the room where something shifted with insect-like stillness. They said, in that frozen moment, they heard distant hooves on the roof and a whisper inside their bones. "Breathe, if you dare." The preacher who once defended them locked himself in the belfry, ringing the cracked bell over and over until his palms tore open and blood slicked the rope. When they found him, he was staring at the dawn with eyes glazed white, repeating only one phrase. "They've unbound what was chained." And still, mothers called them. Because even if death followed, sometimes the baby lived, sometimes, and that hope was a poison too sweet to refuse. Remember, some knowledge changes you forever. Other knowledge sets you free in ways you can never return from. The watchers came closer after the fever. People began seeing them not just in dreams, but in reflections, in lantern glass, in darkened window panes at dawn. Shapes standing behind their shoulders, so close they felt breath against their necks. But when they turned, nothing. only the echo of silence vibrating in their bones. Children woke screaming with words no one taught them, whispering names that turned milk sour and made iron rust overnight. Mothers found tiny jawbones in the folds of their blankets. Fathers saw crows perched along their fences, unmoving for hours, eyes white and unblinking. And always, the sisters were there, appearing before they were summoned, standing at doorways with their black cloaks damp from unseen rain. It was said they could smell birth from miles away, smell death like wolves, scent blood on snow. When they arrived, they hummed in three-part harmony, a sound that felt too large for three human throats. One girl, Elise, who delivered twins under their care, said the humming never stopped. Even after the sisters left, the notes rattled her bones for days. One of her twins never cried. The other wouldn't stop smiling for 6 weeks. Even in sleep, lips peeled back to reveal teeth already budding like tiny pearls beneath his gums. The town council met in secret. Candlelight flickering against fearful eyes, they laid out lists of every strange occurrence, every name, every death, every twisted birth. And at the end of each list, always, Carroway. 2 councilmen and the preacher climbed the ridge to confront them. Only 2 returned. They would not speak of what they saw in that leaning house. Their hair turned white within the week. Their teeth loosened and fell out into their meals. They wept blood when they tried to pray. And the ground, it kept swelling, bulging around the house like something was pushing up from beneath, straining against the soil, eager to see the sky again. Crops failed, livestock miscarried, eggs cracked open to reveal not yolks, but tiny, perfect jawbones, silent, grinning remnants of things never meant to be born. This is not just folklore. These are not merely warnings to keep children close at night. These are the truths buried beneath your feet. Truths that remember you, even when you choose to forget them. By the time the ground split open, no one doubted the Carroway's purpose anymore. They were no mere midwives, no simple healers of ash fever. They were gatekeepers. And gates do not stand alone. Gates open, and what waits beyond them steps through. It was Ha who was seen last, kneeling in the dirt as the earth buckled beneath her. She pressed her hands flat against the cracking soil, her nails blackened with sap and something darker. Witnesses said she whispered to the ground like a lover, promising it freedom, promising it breath. That night, the sky over Dogwood Parish tore itself into ribbons of black lightning. Thunder shook the ridge until shingles fell from roofs miles away. People huddled in corners, clutching crucifixes, rosaries, or whatever charm they believed strong enough to hold back ancient things. But faith forged in comfort is too weak to bind old horrors. They watched from shattered windows as the Carroway house heaved upward, lifted by something beneath. For a moment, the watchers stepped into full sight, figures thin as grave worms, with faces unfinished, eyes wide and empty, arms bending backward, fingers folding in impossible joints. Their mouths hung open in silent laughter, exposing rows of teeth that continued down their throats, shimmering like polished ivory under stormlight. They moved without walking, slid without touching the ground, and as they encircled the sisters, the house sagged into itself. Timbers snapping like bones. Mebeth stood at its sagging doorway, her eyes blank, her tongue flicking against her chin like a snake scenting the air. She turned to the watchers and smiled with her 2 small teeth. In that moment, the ridge split down its center. The earth yawned open in a black chasm, swallowing the house and the sisters. But the watchers remained. They drifted toward the village, silent, their shadows stretching miles ahead. Wherever they passed, lanterns blew out. Wells dried, cattle screamed themselves to death. When dawn finally came, the watchers were gone. But in every household, children woke to find black feathers on their pillows. Some woke with eyes clouded gray. Some never woke at all. Understand this. These stories are not about witches, not about curses, not about salvation denied. They are about the thin veil you trust to hold back everything waiting in the dark. A veil that was never made for your protection, only to keep them hidden long enough for you to forget they were ever there. Long after the Carroways were swallowed by the ridge, the land never healed. Trees twisted away from the chasm, their roots clawing the air like fingers torn from the earth. Grass grew grey and brittle, dissolving into ash underfoot. Birds no longer flew over Dogwood Parish. Even crows refused to roost there. But the watchers remained. They took new shapes to blend among the living, a silent stranger at the market with eyes too large, never blinking. A pale child staring from an abandoned farmhouse window, though no children lived within miles. An old woman sweeping her porch at dawn with no broom in her hands, just a thin bundle of bones bound with twine. The preacher's replacement found journals buried beneath the belfry floorboards, bound in human hide and stained with old blood. Each page described rites older than Scripture, naming powers older than God, powers that fed on hope, that bloomed in suffering, that gave just enough mercy to keep the desperate begging for more. One final entry was scrawled in trembling ink. They were never witches, they were keys, and the lock has opened. Even today, travelers claim they see lights flickering along that salt-blind ridge. They hear humming in three-part harmony echoing through the trees. Some report seeing a tall, leaning house standing there once more, black windows glowing with faint red light. They say if you approach, you will hear scratching beneath your feet, and if you enter, you will hear yourself begging. For what? You will never remember. Remember this. These tales are not about ancient evils long dead. They are warnings that your world is paper thin, that everything you cherish is built upon soil seeded with their teeth. They wait beneath your cities, beneath your churches, beneath your warm and well-lit homes. They wait for your invitation, because desperate prayers still echo, because bargains are still made in the silence of night, because some knowledge is forbidden, not to protect you from it, but to protect it from you. And now that you've heard their story, they know your name,